give you some live examples of how things are. People talk a lot of theory, but I really want to give you live examples, and I want to show this to you in ways that probably you would find entertaining. It's also a way of waking you up after a good lunch today. From where I come, there's this concept of meta universities. The government is discussing about it. You know, marrying physics to dance, and a student can opt for physics and dance and aeronautics engineering and archery and something totally different. And it makes such a lot of sense because human brain does not think in compartments. It's a mixture of all this that brings solutions. Today, I represent an element of that meta university. I'm going to give you an example of it. Typically, I've been introduced here as a journalist, but there are other things in life that I do. I have almost given up being an active journalist. Now I have taken to martial arts. I'm an instructor for a fighting form called Krav Maga, and I train some of the commando forces in the country. So for 30 years I've done journalism. Now I'm going into martial arts and I'm training the forces. And today I'm going to bring you some aspects of martial arts which are directly related to healthcare. So, for example, I'll request the gentleman there to please step forward. I selected him for martial arts. Now, I'm going to hold my hands like this, and with all your weight, you have to push me down. Push. Okay, he's really pushing me. I am actually going down under the weight of this. Now, I'm going to roll back my hands. And now, I'm going to ask you to push me. Push. I'm actually able to lift him off the ground. This is all science. I am now beginning to engage my back muscles to lift him. When I did that, this was just two hands. When I turned my hand around, I was engaging my not in use back muscles to push him up. And it was so easy for me to do that. So typically in martial arts, the lighter human being, the smaller person, has to run against a bigger man who is 6 feet, 7 feet, big muscle groups. He has to fight them off. How do you do that? By training your unused muscles to do that. Now, if I were to bring this into, say, medical science, how does this work? Now, I would request you to sit here for a while. Would I soil your coat? It's okay. Okay. Now, I am a nursing assistant, and he's a patient who's not participating with me. How does the nurse transfer this gentleman from here to the cot? How does it conventionally? If you can just turn around a bit and sit sideways, please. Sit. The nurse will stand here, put her hand and lift. No, please don't participate. Okay. Lift. And this eventually ends up breaking the nurse's back. Martial arts. How I would do it as a martial artist. How do I throw off or lift a person who is heavier than me? I put my leg between his, lower my body. It is all about, thank you. It's all about using center of gravity to lift a person off. I want to transfer a person on a bed from this bed to the other bed. They usually pick them up with the bed sheet and transfer it. If you ever visited Safdarjung Hospital, Hindi में उसको कसाई खाना कहते हैं. Kasai? Butcher shop. Because that's how they transfer patients. There it goes. But if nurses were to practice a bit of martial arts or introduce this into their learning, they can easily pick off a person and transfer them very softly, very gently to the other cot. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now, this is Meta University. How do you engage from one branch of learning to another? Now, I'm bringing some aspects of my journalism, not so much about my martial art interest, but journalism into some of the things that you can relate to. But these are live examples, and you can understand how easy or how difficult it is to talk about the concept of content. Content isn't easy. You know how to write is one thing, but to be accurate, to be correct, to be clear, to be brief is altogether another game. It's really complicated business. I was not too sure if I could have attended this meeting. I was calling up Hemant and saying I had to be taken to the hospital just before I came here. My family took me to the hospital, and the doctor said I had a severe case of food poisoning. Severe case. And I was almost collapsing on the bed, and I had not taken any food from outside. For a whole month, I have only eaten from home. And the doctor told me that I had food poisoning, and a very severe case of that. I was recuperating on my bed on the last day, and as a journalist, I started thinking. And I said, was this food poisoning or was I poisoned? Was this food poisoning or was I poisoned? And you realize just by the change of the use of word, how an entire layer of story is split open. Why is it poisoning? Because the whole of North India is now, I don't know how it happens in southern regions, but the whole of North India is eating vegetables that are polished, tomatoes that are brushed with chemical dye, watermelon that's injected with red fluid, milk, everyday milk that is made out of whitewash. Children, people are eating and drinking this. And the effect is not to be dismissed as food poisoning. I have been poisoned. I have been deliberately poisoned. And this is not the effect on one man. This, if you tell me to describe it accurately, is called mass murder. A generation of people who are going to come up after us. Women are going to be sterile, men are going to be impotent, and we'll have no Indians left. And this is the plot. This is the plot. I can dismiss this as a journalist by saying it is food poisoning. But when I say it accurately, it's called poisoned. I have been poisoned. And that is the complication of content. You have to tell the story for what it is. This is Pratibha Patil when she was the President of India. She was on a flight to Mumbai, and another airliner, she was flying by her presidential flight, another airliner came quite close to her, quite close, and you have to follow an air corridor. One airplane is not supposed to come within reaching distance of another plane, and it came quite close. And obviously the government wanted to protect its interest by saying this is not callousness. You know, the first citizen of India was in danger, and obviously the government didn't want to accept its callousness, so it sold a story. It sold a story to everybody, and they lapped it up, and they said President Pratibha Patil in an air miss. Air miss. Remember the word, it is air miss. And when we got the story, we changed the word and said it is not a near miss. Remember the use of the word near miss. We said it's a near hit. And see how I change a context. A person, when they said near miss, was a cover up to a government. A near hit means this is the description of the actual event. Content is complicated, and professionals have to handle it for what it is. This is a story from 1994 or 96. We have a very prominent jeweler in Delhi. Like you have Alucas in Kerala and other big jewelers. In Delhi, we have a very, very big jeweler group. I won't name them. And there was another rival group which was equally big in Delhi. There were just two very, very big jewelers. And one day there was an income tax raid on one of the jewelers. And because of the way we are trained to write news, we said a prominent jeweler in Delhi was raided by the income tax inspectors. The next day, we got a defamation notice from the other jeweler. He said, we are also prominent. We are also prominent people. Why? And you have created a confusion. You see, content is tricky. Content is really very tricky. Sometimes it's also benumbing. Now, I don't know, many of you are doctors. The sight of seeing countless of cancer patients may make you clinical. Some of the things that Hemant was referring to in his slides also. Are we getting too clinical about it? Is this science or this is human life? Sometimes we begin to forget. It's a good sign for professionals to actually be clinical. But there is a human dimension to each of these stories. Listen to this story. I don't know if you've seen this picture. Have you? Have you seen this? Yes. Okay. The story behind this is from Sudan famine. Hundreds of children were dying, little children like this. This is a girl child, and she is crawling because she doesn't have strength. She's actually crawling on her hips because she can't have the strength to stand up and walk to a food station which was a kilometer away. And she was crawling, and this vulture comes hopping behind her, waiting to see her die so that she could pick on the baby. The photographer who shot this photo, he actually clicked the photo, a big journalist from The Guardian, and he clicked the photo and he went away. And he published this in the newspaper, and the whole world realized that Sudan was actually going through a big famine and it needed help. A brilliant story was told. The day he was awarded the best photography for the year, one reporter from the audience got up and said, "What did you do about the child?" And then it stuck to him. What did I do? I could have picked up the child and taken it to the food station. He just clicked the photograph and moved away. And the sense of guilt was so much in him that he went back to his room and hanged himself. That sometimes we get into this clinical trap so much that we forget that we are dealing with human beings. And you are in one of the most noblest professions in this world. You give life to people. I've seen people go and kiss their doctor's hand because they think that their life can be saved. And when you talk about the services that you do you do it clinically? Or would you allow me to tell your story to the world in the way that it should be told? Hemant brought out some of these slides. It's not about 600 babies born in this fertility clinic. It is 600 lamps that you've lit in those homes which thought they didn't have a hope of seeing a child. That's the story that needs to be told. And when you engage people with that kind of storytelling, people will come to you. They'll return that trust. I don't have too much to go on except to show you a lot of Krav Maga and martial arts, which I'll leave it for another day. But this is what I want to tell. Content is complicated. And my role is now to try and help tell these stories in the way that they should be. The part of me as a journalist will not die, but I'm so sure that the doctors in you are very good people. I do hear some of these side stories, like I hear about journalists also. The people who would see these notepads and slip. I'm sure there might be people there, but I'm sure in this group there are no such people, and I would love to tell your stories. And I'm here to assist Anvita to tell all these stories. Limited things that I say, but I hope I can reach out to you and probably come and see you sometime, probably live these stories out with you and tell the world that what the brilliant work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Any questions from the audience? Please feel free to ask questions. Anyone?